When Sierra Langston walked into her own home that afternoon, she wasn't ready for what she was about to see. Her mother, the woman who raised her, the woman who comforted her after heartbreak, was in her bed, naked, with her husband. What happened next was even more unthinkable. As Sierra screamed and threatened to call the police, her mother's expression didn't show guilt. It didn't show fear. It showed cold determination. Seconds later, a kitchen knife was in her hand. By the time police arrived, Sierra's blood was splattered across family portraits on the living room walls, and the man at the center of it all, her husband, watched it unfold without lifting a finger. But why? Why would a mother kill her own daughter over a man? And how deep did this forbidden obsession run? This is the chilling story of a grieving widow's lust, a husband's betrayal, and a family secret that exploded into one of the most shocking murders in Willow Creek's history. The Langstons were the picture of respectability in Willow Creek. 22-year-old Sierra Langston was seen as a devoted wife and a rising star in interior design. Her husband, Cole Myers, at 26, was the town's golden boy, a charismatic mechanic with big plans for his own auto shop. When Sierra's father died suddenly of pancreatic cancer, her mother Veronica moved in. Neighbors spoke kindly about the arrangement, believing it to be a touching example of family unity. A grieving widow finding comfort in the home of her only daughter. But inside those walls, something darker was festering. At 45, Veronica was no longer the broken woman friends had once pitied. She became possessive of Cole in ways that felt unnatural. She complimented his looks too often, touched his arm a little too long during conversations, laughed at his jokes in a way that made Sierra uneasy. When Sierra's best friend Jade came over for coffee one afternoon, she couldn't ignore what she saw. Veronica's eyes lingered on Cole like a predator sizing up prey. Later, Jade pulled Sierra aside. "Something about the way your mom looks at Cole. It's not motherly." Sierra brushed it off. "She's still grieving. Maybe she just misses male company." She wanted to believe that. She needed to believe it. But the cracks were already showing. Late one evening, Sierra watched from the kitchen doorway as her mother laughed too loudly at something Cole said. Veronica's hand rested on his shoulder, just a second too long. The next day, Sierra caught Veronica standing at the kitchen window, staring at Cole as he worked shirtless on his car. Her fingers clutched her coffee mug so tightly it shattered, porcelain splintering on the counter. Veronica didn't flinch. She simply set the broken pieces down, her eyes still fixed on him. It was the first silent warning that this house, once filled with love, was about to become a battlefield. The descent began on a stormy Friday night when Sierra stayed late at her design studio, racing to meet a demanding client deadline. Back at home, Veronica and Cole sat together in the dimly lit living room, sharing a bottle of wine. Veronica wore a silk robe, an unsettling choice for a casual evening with her son-in-law. At first, their conversation seemed harmless. Memories of Veronica's late husband, her crushing loneliness, Cole's growing frustration with Sierra's long absences. But as the wine flowed, the lines blurred. Veronica's hand brushed Cole's as she reached for her glass, their eyes locking in a charged silence that lasted too long. When Cole didn't pull away, Veronica leaned in, her lips meeting his in a kiss that should never have happened. By the time Sierra returned home hours later, the damage was done. They had crossed a line that couldn't be erased. From that night on, Veronica became bolder. She slipped suggestive notes into Cole's jacket pocket, wore his favorite cologne, and whispered promises in his ear when Sierra wasn't around. Cole, torn between guilt and a craving he couldn't suppress, found himself drawn deeper into a web of betrayal spun by the one woman he should have avoided. Sierra couldn't ignore the subtle but unsettling changes in her own home. Veronica, once content in baggy morning clothes, now painted her lips a deep red and wore dresses that clung to her figure. Her perfume, heavy and sweet, lingered in every corner. Cole grew distant, his eyes darting away whenever Sierra entered a room, his touches colder, shorter. At first, she told herself she was imagining it, but her best friend Jade wasn't so sure. "Sierra, something's wrong. Don't wait until it's too late. You need to ask them." Sierra shook her head, forcing a weak smile. "She's my mom. Cole would never betray me." But the cracks widened. Late one night, while searching Cole's truck for her, missing charger, Sierra froze. Draped across the passenger seat was a silk scarf, her mother's favorite. Her chest tightened as icy realization crept in. The next morning, she woke early to the sound of whispers in the kitchen. She crept closer, heart pounding. Veronica's voice was soft, but urgent. "She'll never understand us, Cole. She can't." Sierra felt her stomach twist into knots. Her world, once solid, was starting to crumble beneath her feet. April 16th was a day Sierra Langston would never forget. She left work early, clutching a bag of Cole's favorite takeout, smiling at the thought of surprising him. But the moment she stepped into the house, her smile faded. From upstairs came laughter, a soft, intimate sound that didn't belong in her home. It was her mother's voice. Sierra's chest tightened as dread sank its claws into her. She set the bag down silently and crept up the staircase, each step heavier than the last. Her hand trembled as she reached for the bedroom door. She pushed it open, tangled around them, oblivious to her presence. The scent of betrayal hung thick in the air. For a moment, Sierra couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then the scream tore from her throat, a sound so raw and piercing it seemed to shake the walls. Upstairs, the lovers froze, their expressions morphing from pleasure to horror. But it was too late. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. Sierra's body trembled as rage and heartbreak collided in her chest. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "How could you? Both of you? In my house? In my bed?" Veronica didn't flinch. Her lips curled into a sinister smirk, her eyes hard with cold determination. "Because I love him, and he loves me," she said, each word dripping with venom. Sierra's hands shook as she grabbed her car keys. "I'm done. I'm telling everyone. The neighbors, the police. Your sick little secret ends today." Cole stood rooted to the floor, his face pale, his mouth opening but no words coming. He didn't defend Sierra. He didn't deny Veronica. He just watched as the storm unfolded. Veronica's breathing grew shallow and uneven. Her eyes darkened, and her chest rose and fell in quick, sharp movements. She stepped between Sierra and the door, her hands gripping the handle of a kitchen knife that seemed to appear out of nowhere. "You're not taking him from me?" she hissed, her knuckles white as she tightened her hold on the blade. Sierra's eyes widened in terror as she realized her mother wasn't just angry, she was dangerous. It happened so fast, Sierra barely had time to react. Veronica's eyes burned with a twisted mix of rage and desperation as she lunged forward, the blade catching the light for a split second before plunging deep into Sierra's chest. The first stab stole her breath, the second made her legs buckle. She tried to scream, but only a strangled gasp escaped as warm blood poured down her blouse. Veronica didn't stop. She drove the knife in again and again, each strike fueled by a blind obsession that had consumed her entirely. The sound of the blade tearing through flesh echoed through the once peaceful home, blood sprayed across the walls, painting family portraits in crimson, as Cole stood frozen in the corner, too stunned or too cowardly to intervene. Sierra's body crumpled to the floor, her trembling hand reaching weakly toward her mother, her voice a fragile whisper breaking beneath the weight of betrayal. "Why, Mom?" Her eyes clouded with tears and pain as the life faded from them, leaving only the reflection of the woman who had given her life and then stolen it away. Veronica's hands shook as she wrapped Sierra's lifeless body in a bedsheet. her breath ragged as she dragged her daughter across the hardwood floor, leaving a faint trail of blood that smeared with each pull. Cole stood nearby, pale and trembling, watching as his mother-in-law worked with chilling focus. She barked orders at him, her voice sharp and cold like she had done this before. Smash the window, scatter the jewelry, flip the couch over, make it look like a break-in. Cole obeyed silently, his heart pounding, his palms slick with sweat as he knocked over drawers and threw clothes across the room, but no amount of chaos could erase the truth. Veronica failed to notice the bloody fingerprints on the kitchen knife she had hastily set down, or the tiny droplets leading from the bedroom to the sink where she had tried to wash her hands clean outside. Jade pulled into the driveway, frowning as she saw Sierra's car still parked. She knocked, but no one answered. Her eyes caught something on the ground. Sierra's phone face cracked screen dark, lying in the dirt like it had been tossed. Jade's stomach churned as she picked it up, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Detectives flooded the quiet. Langston home, their boots heavy on the blood-stained floor. Veronica sat on the couch, clutching a tissue to her face, her sobs loud, dramatic, almost rehearsed. She told them a masked intruder had broken in and attacked Sierra. She claimed she had tried to fight him off but failed. Her voice cracked at all the right moments, but her eyes betrayed no real grief, only calculation. Seasoned officers exchanged glances, sensing something off. Her story shifted each time they pressed her for details. First, she said she was in the kitchen, then upstairs. Then she claimed she didn't see the intruder's face at all in the interrogation room. Cole sat hunched over his hands, trembling, his eyes bloodshot with guilt and fear. Hours passed before he finally broke his voice, barely above a whisper as he admitted everything. The affair, the betrayal, and the horrifying moment Veronica stabbed her own daughter. He said he froze, too terrified to stop her or call for help when asked why he helped stage the scene. He said he didn't know anymore. Maybe he thought he owed Veronica. Maybe he was afraid of her. The autopsy results sealed Veronica's fate. Sierra had fought back hard. Defensive wounds covered her arms and hands, and under her fingernails, investigators found traces of Veronica's skin tissue and blood, indisputable proof of a struggle between mother and daughter. It wasn't just murder. It was personal, brutal, and deliberate. The courtroom was packed with reporters, flashing cameras, and murmuring spectators who could barely believe the story unfolding before them. Veronica sat at the defense table, her face painted with false fragility, a widow-turned-accused killer. She pled not guilty, her lawyers arguing she acted in self-defense, claiming Sierra had attacked her in a jealous rage. But the prosecution dismantled her narrative piece by piece. They portrayed Veronica as a manipulative predator who preyed on her daughter's husband, exploiting his weaknesses and seducing him into an affair that destroyed the family. They described how her obsession turned deadly when Sierra threatened to expose the secret. Cole took the stand, his voice shaking as he recounted the night of the murder. He admitted to the affair, his eyes never meeting Veronica's as he described how she had plunged the knife into Sierra's chest. Again and again, jurors listened in silence. Some, visibly shaken by the raw brutality of the crime witnesses, spoke of Veronica's strange behavior in the weeks leading up to the killing. Her possessive stares, her dismissive attitude toward Sierra. The evidence was overwhelming. The defensive wounds, the fingerprints, the lies under oath. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. Veronica Langston showed no emotion as the judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her daughter's death now etched forever in the courtroom walls and in the hearts of everyone who had watched a mother's love twisted into a monstrous obsession. Veronica Langston was led away in handcuffs. Her face pale, her once perfect composure shattered as the judge's words echoed life in prison without the possibility of parole. She would never walk free, never see the world beyond steel bars again. Cole Myers sat in a separate courtroom, trembling as the gavel fell, sentencing him to 8 years for obstruction of justice, his role in covering up the crime, sealing his fate. Jade stood outside the courthouse, clutching Sierra's favorite scarf, tears streaming down her face. She refused to let her best friend's death be in vain. In the months that followed, she launched Sierra's Light, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping victims of family betrayal and domestic violence. It became a beacon of hope in a world that had been so cruel. Sierra's journals were recovered from her bedroom. One entry dated just weeks before her murder sent chills through all who read it. "I feel like I'm living with strangers." Those words became her haunting legacy, a painful reminder of how the people closest to us can sometimes be the ones who destroy us. This story left you breathless and questioning how far obsession can go. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications for more true crime documentaries that expose the darkest corners of the human heart. We bring you stories of betrayal, secrets, and the chilling reality behind closed doors. Don't miss the next case that will leave you speechless.